And my first client was actually my previous employer.
So what I like about you is you've got unique offer and you're selling to big fish.
I got on a call because I want to reach out, finance professionals, whatnot. This guy, he's taking a call from a yacht, and not like a small yacht, like a big yacht company. Like, yeah, $40-50 billion company. And I had no idea what I was doing.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another interview. I'm here with Matt Lucero, a previous student of mine, and Carson Fox, if you know him. And he's been doing some really cool stuff, scaled up much faster than he thought he could. For one, I just knew he was going to be successful from day one, and I knew this is how this is all going to pan out. So, I just predicted the future. But Matt, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me and super excited to chat.
Yeah. So what I like about you is you've got unique offer and you're selling to big fish. And a lot of beginners struggle with that. Like, they've never been in the world of venture capitalists and IT firms and all these businesses, flowing in and flowing out millions of dollars a year or tens of millions of dollars a year or more. And therefore they're going for these local businesses, which there's nothing wrong with that, but the prices they can charge and the results they can generate are limited. So tell us a little bit about how you decided to go down the route that you did, what you're selling to them, but keep it to those first 6 months or so. How did you decide on the agency model and the niche?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of the strategy around, it's definitely luck, like how I came about it. Really how I came about this whole thing as a whole is my first client, I knew I wanted to run some sort of agency, wanted to not work a job. And my first client was actually my previous employer, which was a IT consulting firm. The stars kind of aligned in that way, which was awesome. But I think too, the mindset around it was just like, these are the people that can afford to pay these prices. And so it just made sense to reach out to them. I think a lot of people just as a whole have a misunderstanding of the business market landscape. Like, a small business is literally defined as a business with less than 100 employees. And most people, if you ask some person just starting out to 100-person business, that's a huge business. No, that's most people work for big giant enterprises. There's Fortune 500 companies that literally employ 50,000 people. A business that has 50 employees is still very small in the grand scheme of things. So I think it's more so just a mindset thing of why people don't reach out to it. But the way I came about was more so just luck. It's that was who I used to work for. I decided to sell it to them, which ended up working out great. And then I just found more people like them, which are just other smallish businesses.
Got it. So when you say small, you're thinking probably 10 times bigger than most, SMMA beginners who get into it and think, 8 employees, 10 employees, which is very cool. So you were working at the IT firm. Did you quit and then just be like, hey, why don't I sell you this? Or you're like, hey, I'm going to start a business. Can you be my first client? How did that first, arrangement come about?
Yeah, so actually, zooming out big picture, whenever I was working for them, this was probably high school. So I was 18, I'm 22 now. I worked for them, and then COVID came around. And so after COVID, I ended up getting laid off because, part of what I was doing was I was a senior in high school. So it was work, study, whatever, school ended. And so that kind of ended. And then I ended up going to college for a little bit. And then I actually started working at a different job that was IT adjacent. After working there, and deciding I was working for the government, and after working there and deciding okay, I want to go back and start this business. First people that came to mind were them, because I already had previous relationship with them, and it kind of just made sense. I literally just was thinking oh, I want to start an ads agency. So I just looked up on Facebook Ad Manager, are they running ads? And they weren't. And I was like, oh, hey, I saw you guys aren't running ads. You need help with marketing. So yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you didn't really end up selling them ads, right? It was more like a cold email strategy or LinkedIn, from what I remember.
Yeah, so I kind of did. It was literally just hey, do you need marketing? And they're like, yeah, that'd be great. We need more clients. And it started off as Google Ads was my plan. I had multiple ideas. I was we're going to do a Google Ads funnel, and then we're going to do LinkedIn outreach. And then I didn't even know about cold email at this point. So it was Google Ads, build them out a landing page and get them set up with high level, and because they didn't even have a CRM, which was crazy to me. And then, yeah, so it was basically 3 things, LinkedIn outreach, Google Ads, and CRM implementation. But And then it slowly over time transitioned to like, after we saw what was more successful and not, then it was just like basically direct outreach.
I see. And so those first few months, were they getting an ROI, or was it you just kind of being like, hey, we're going to figure out what works for you and slowly, transition to that cold email kind of thing?
Yeah, over the first few months, like they probably didn't see an ROI until like month 6, honestly, because well, part of it is just sales cycles are long, but part of it was what you said, like the second thing, which is, hey, let's try a bunch of things, see what works and doesn't work. And I was just so hungry because it was my first and only client, and I was just like, I need to figure out something. So I just threw like the whole kitchen sink. It was, we're gonna do this, we're gonna try this, and we kept like iterating. But yeah, what ultimately they ended up getting an ROI about like 6 months in, and then beyond that, continually higher ROI. But part of that's just the sales cycle, and part of that was just me trying to like figure out what to sell them or like what worked.
I think that's a big thing a lot of beginners struggle with. Like, oh, if I don't get an ROI in 2 weeks, like they're going to hate me. How did you make sure that the relationship didn't strain end before those 6 months? Because that's not, overnight getting an ROI, which would be ideal, but didn't happen in this case.
Yeah, I think part of this goes back to like the persona thing, which is, and this is like a big learning moment, I would say to like anyone who's starting out, is that big businesses, or I would say even small businesses, like a real established business, they don't think about things in months or weeks. They think about it in quarters or years. So when I talk, I would say I'm very lucky that that was my first client, like someone who's actually established. They were very like understanding, not someone who's like very demanding and whatnot. But most businesses think in terms of quarterly time horizons, yearly time horizons, like the ones that make the millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. They're pretty understanding and like know that those types of things don't happen overnight. It's actually funny that it is inverse, that while like the bigger businesses pay more, have lower expectations, and get better clients and just better results. And it is also the meme where it's like, $500 client versus $5,000 clients, like invoice paid. It is 100% that. So I think that's part of it. It's just the quality of client was one part. And the second part too, I think, was just communication. I think big picture, I would say the bigger the fish you work with, or those types of clients, it's about the relationship, it's about the communication. And a lot of times what I've seen is that clients understand that you're not going to get it right the first time. Like everything's iterative. They run a business, they're understanding. It's just, are you communicating what you're doing to fix it? And then are you iterating? So it's like, hey, we've been doing this for X amount of time. I think that we should pivot. Let's get on a call so we can discuss how to pivot. And they're very receptive to that because, again, they see that you're iterating, you're doing work, and overall, they just understand that that's part of the process.
Yeah. If you want to double your retention, just tell the client everything you're doing, even if you feel like you're annoying them. You're like, hey, today we worked on this. Today I tweaked this. Here's another update. Here's another update. You don't have to respond. I'm just letting you know. Like that, every time you do that, they're like, oh, I know what I'm paying for. But every time you don't do that, which I was talking to somebody recently whose agency is not, and I was talking to the client whose agency is not doing this, and they're like, I don't even know what I paid for the last year. Like I stayed on the whole year, but now I'm feeling like upset. And even if it's just like, hey, we're working on something, like we're gonna do this better. Like I get messages back from my clients that are like, we just appreciate you working on it. Like we know you guys are great. Like that's the core of retention is customer service. It's not results, ironically.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say that like 10 times over. They understand as long as you continually provide comments and feedback. They're like, wow, they see the value because you just keep communicating it. If you don't communicate, it might as well not have happened.
But before we get started, our sponsor, High Level, has very kindly sponsored this episode. So let's talk about them for a minute. If you don't know already, High Level is the top sales and marketing solution for any business, but particularly agency owners or anybody that needs a software product to resell to their existing customer base. It has everything you need to capture, nurture, and close leads for marketing clients. And the best part is High Level believes in not taxing the agencies on its platform, so you can get unlimited clients for one low flat monthly fee. The best features include a CRM, funnel, website and email builders, course hosting platform, robust marketing automation builder, a consolidated chat stream with WhatsApp, email, SMS, Instagram DMs, and Facebook DMs, reputation management, social media posting, tracking and analytics, and so much more. And as if that wasn't enough, High Level is fully white labeled, meaning that you can take the platform and put your own brand on the desktop and mobile app and resell it to your industry for whatever price you want. Essentially, what High Level has done is brought the bar for starting a software company way lower so normal people like you and I can help our clients with an amazingly robust software without paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in development costs. I am not kidding when I say hands down, High Level is my favorite software of all time. It has been integral to my success with my agency. It helped me increase my clients' results and retention, and I use it every single day for my own business. And if you sign up for High Level today, not only will you get a 30-day free trial, which is not available on their website, but you'll get all of the bonuses listed at itskeaton.com/mastermind, which gets you support, templates, and courses to kickstart your High Level journey and get those first few clients or scale to your next few clients. If you're already a High Level customer, you can also get all of those bonuses by upgrading to the next highest plan underneath my link. Instructions for that are also at itskeaton.com/mastermind.
Right.
I had a student once who was like, yeah, I lost this client. Like he only had 3 clients at the time. They weren't paying him a ton. And like, I knew it was a big hit to him. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, man. Like what happened? He's like, well, I went out of town for like 3 days and didn't respond to him. I'm like, this is literally the most basic thing in the world. And I can't, like, I don't feel bad for you. And that's for anyone listening, like genuinely, there's not another secret out there. Like we're not hiding this from you. Just be communicative. Okay. So Matt, you closed the first client, you're trying to work out with them. If I remember correctly, it was like a couple months before you ever got the second one. How did you get them? And did you know more of what you were selling at that point? Like, was it just the B2B outreach at that point? And who was the client?
Yeah, so at this point, I had this client, I think probably for long, it was probably like 4 or 5 months before I got the second client, because I was just so worried that I want to like hyper obsess about them, which I think big picture is the wrong mindset. You should stack up clients while you're working on the initial client, because your first client might not pan out. There could be a lot of variables. You should always get more momentum rolling. But that aside, what I should have been doing earlier was just doing the stuff I was doing for my clients for myself, which took me a while to realize. But after I started doing my own outreach, it was through cold email, which is what we sell, and it was for cold email. So at this point, I had joined a couple more groups, just gotten a lot more context after like just learning and consuming tons of content. And I settled on cold email as a service. I liked it a lot because unlike, the other outreach, like there's a lot of ways you can do outreach, but cold email seems like the enterprise, what the big dogs do. And then it's also very targetable. Like if I were to go to someone and say, hey, we can do Twitter DMs, problem with Twitter DMs, you can't filter and say, be super granular with the type of people you're targeting because there's no good data out there. So settled with cold email, decided to do it performance based again to get initial traction and get people in. And then that's why I sold my second client on. It was approximately 4 or 5 months after, signed him through cold email on cold email as a service. And then it kind of started slowly snowball from there.
And was that a second IT client, IT consulting?
No, it was actually, so my niche isn't really much of a niche. It's B2B companies, and I intentionally leave it broad. Think specifically for this service, cold email, that if you just target one really micro vertical, you're going to end up outreaching on their behalf to the same people with the same services, which kind of defeats the purpose in a lot of ways. So I do like B2B as a niche, and this second client was a marketing agency. And then after that, it's a lot of agencies came to be like the main.
Okay, so before I ask more questions about that second client, what I really like about what you said is getting one client and just basing everything off of them is a bad idea. And you need a bigger subset of people that you're working with to actually get some data. Like my first client, if every client I worked with was like my first client, like Deca Millionaire, because the results were insanely easy. They were insanely easy to work with. And like everything worked out in my favor. If everybody was like my second client, I would have quit SMMA 2 months in because they were really hard. And the area was hard. Getting results was hard. I didn't know how to diagnose the problems. And I think a lot of people maybe start out with what happened to be my second client. Instead of that first client, they get discouraged and then they quit. Whereas really what you need to do is test probably one service, but maybe multiple services in multiple verticals, in multiple markets, if you stick to one vertical, and don't make any decisions until you've tried it 10 times. And then be like, okay, this is what's next. Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, for sure. I would agree 100%. I think that as a beginner, basically everything changes when you get that first like dopamine, like success win, where you have the full cycle of like, you sign someone and then you got them the result and then they're happy and you're like, this is a business. And it is very unfortunate. I would say, again, I'm super lucky, and it sounds like you had a similar situation where your first client turned out great. And some of the other clients, you're like, man, if I got this as my first client, it would have been super discouraging. You would have like thought all these negative things and it could have like spiraled downwards. Because everyone gets those clients. That's just a normal part of business. But I would say, yeah, 100% working almost as like a freelancer and just testing a lot of different things with a lot of different people is one of the best ways that you can just understand, like, what should I sell? What should I charge? Who should I work with? Because you get a lot of ideas about the personas, like what you like and you don't like. And then you just get your hands dirty and able to like have some sort of social proof that you can sell other people on too.
Exactly. And this way it drives me nuts when people are like, just hire a contractor with your first client. I'm like, you literally have somebody could apply for your Upwork post, write 100% BS, and you would think this is going to be great because you have no idea how to vet. You don't understand the services. You don't understand the context. And that's what a lot of these gurus are pushing beginners to do. Whereas you have to put in the time to do that freelancer era of your business journey. And it doesn't have to last that long. Like, just bang your head against the keyboard for 6 months and you'll look up and be like, oh, I understand what to do now. But instead we want to be like chilling on the beach, fishing on day 3 of starting our business, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous too. And I think it's indicative, just as like a macro thing, as a business owner, you should know how to do a little bit of everything. Include service delivery is the most important part of your business. And like outsourcing that is definitely not the right way to do it, especially like just when you're starting out. Like, you being able to sell someone is also tied into you knowing how the service works and be able to set proper expectations. It's just I think, even as like a macro thing that I see too, it's like, you as a business owner, this might be controversial, but you should know how to do everything in the business, especially in the beginning. And then only at a certain point, then you can start to like outsource things, because it's never going to hurt you to know more things. And as you scale, you need to keep the people that I see are successful keep their hands on the pulse of like whatever they're doing. You can't just like leave it up to someone else and their quality control and whatever. The reason why people work with you long term as an agency is because your quality is great, your service is great, and all the things are just tied up super neatly. So 100%, like, I would say that's probably the biggest mistake, is just outsourcing things way too early.
Yeah, I think there's a point very far down the line where you're just like, how can I leapfrog years of learning by hiring somebody and bringing them in? But like, at that point, you have so much acumen that you can look and sit there and know if somebody's BSing you. At the beginning, you have literally no idea. You're trying to hold them accountable and you don't know if they're just lying to you. Like, they could make up whatever they want and you'd say, like, you'd repeat that to the client, and any client that knows a thing about marketing would know that you don't know what you're talking about. So excellent advice there. I also like the way you described settling on cold email, because I tend to agree with you, even though it gets a bad rap as like everybody's doing it, email's dead, like all this kind of thing. And um, the way that I look at it is like, again, the big dogs, like you said, are doing it, but also it's the only one that's not like pretty much, it's going to be around forever. Like, it's been around forever and it's going to be around for a long time. DMs, you have limits. Obviously, I have limits with cold email, but it's easier to get around them. SMS is, dying. Cold calls, that kind of thing, you could absolutely do, but you have to have a lot more manpower there until the AI is ready, I guess. But tell me more about the data that you're able to find on this kind of thing. And then, is this a service that a lot of B2B businesses are already looking for? Or are they just like, hey, I want to grow? And you're like, cool, we can do a cold email. And they're like, that makes sense. I understand it. And anything else that went into that selection process for you?
Yeah, I guess macro, the selection process, it was 100% just like the targetability. If you like, people talk about different lead generation mechanisms, and I think they all have their merits, right? Of direct outreach, cold outreach, like, it's great. But to people who, I would say that there's different levels, like a lot of the SMMA types, like that's such like a low, I don't want to say it in like a negative light. It's just saying in the grand scheme of the types of businesses there are, like from Fortune 500 down to like freelancers, SMMA stuff, it's very much like at the bottom of, or like the YouTube, the Twitter, the type of stuff that people like are just getting into. It's on the low end. And so those types of people, it's like, okay, they want to sign a client. They're signing it for $500, $1,000, $2,000 and whatnot, and they don't really care. It could be, a roof or a plumber. It could be this or that, which again, none of these things are necessarily bad. But when you work and you go up market to like these enterprise type people where they're like, okay, we work with people using Salesforce, and that they're typically a mid-market company, and they're typically, in the United States, and that also the titles that they're typically like a Salesforce implementation specialist or a CRO or, a VP of whatever, right? You cannot target any of those things. Like if you're lucky, you can find a Facebook group of people using, that software and reach out to those people. But you can't target by titles, you can't target by head counts, you can't target by locations. There's so many things that are limited. And so what I love about cold email is the data. There's tons of data providers. There's Apollo, ZoomInfo, ListKit. There's tons of these tools out there where it just scrapes LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's another great data tool where they have all this data publicly available. So if I want to say, okay, you previously had a dental agency, it's like, I want to target dentists in Wyoming that have 5 to 25 employees because that's our most profitable sector. I can identify and locate all the ones that are publicly available. So you can get super, super, super laser targeted with it, which is amazing. And that's what all the companies want, because they want dentists that can afford their services and might be in a specific location, and the decision maker. You don't want to reach out to, maybe the decision maker is the office manager, but in a lot of other businesses, they want to talk to the VP or whatnot. So that's why I came to cold email. It just seems like such a perfect storm of like a great tool, and it's cheap in terms of like setting up the cold email tech and whatever. It's more time intensive than running ads, I would figure, but it is a lot cheaper. Like to set up a cold email campaign to where I could send 10,000 emails a month, it's a couple $100 monthly, right? And so you can set it up, get the emails out super targeted straight to your ideal persona, and you can sell super, super high ticket stuff over cold email. So that was kind of like the selection process. Tons of granularity with cold email. I think that, like you said too, another great part is it's been around for a while, so it's going to continue being around. I think a lot is going to change with the mass adoption of it and people's capabilities send more than they have been before. But as a medium channel, Fortune 500 companies use it, which means that it works and it's here to stay. And a lot of companies also have vested interest in having it stay. That's another interesting piece too, is like Google ads is great and Facebook ads is great because these $1 trillion companies are perpetuating it, keeping it alive, versus like Facebook DMs. Facebook doesn't make money off that. So they don't want, they're actually trying to get rid of it, or, try and limit it and make it a more usable experience. Cold email, ironically, Google doesn't make tons of money, or Microsoft doesn't, but they make money from the inboxes. And also that since so many big orgs pay Google to use their inboxes and pay Microsoft, that they have the vested interest. There's also $7 billion companies like ZoomInfo. They have vested interest. So I think it's here to stay. It's just a service that reliably works, and get great results with it. So worked out great.
Yeah, I love that. And I really hope everyone listening is like taking notes from this smart man who was like, I want to start an agency. He was able to get his first client fast, but he could have just been working a job, basically, like get a part-time job where you're making $2,000 a month, cover everything, and join some groups, like figure out what's what inside of the agency world. And the solution is going to appear for you. Like Matt running this agency aligned with his skills, his interests, and he was able to locate the niche, the vertical that wasn't getting targeted by all the other people, and therefore has grown into a business that's very successful and that he's enjoying. Where you run into trouble is, oh, I watched a YouTube video, I'm just going to copy everything verbatim. I'm going to copy the outreach script, I'm going to copy the niche, and you give up 2 weeks in because you didn't take the time to invest in yourself and just observe and let your brain work it out, because it takes a minute, and that's okay. Cool. So you got the second client, and since then, I assume the rate of getting clients has ramped up. Tell us about the following, 6 months or so, because at this point you're about 6 months into the journey. You've been running the agency for a year and a half now, so give us a picture of those next 6 months. How many clients did you close? What changed during that time?
Yeah, I would say the next 6 months. So this was taking probably from the beginning of last year to midway through last year. I ended up getting up to about, I'd say probably 7 to 10 clients from two. So in like a short period of time between February and March, I think I closed like 3 clients in a week, which was a crazy fluke. And onboard all those people was crazy amount of money coming in at once for me. I like doubled my clientele in like a week, basically.
And was that from cold email? Like you had cold emailed them?
All from cold email. And the another great part about this is there's so much frame of just like the way that I got you on the phone with me is the same way that we're going to get you on the phone with clients. So it's like it was just a win-win. The sales process was great. And selling on a performance basis, that's another thing that, it's just very easy to get people on whenever they're like, okay, whenever we're winning, you're winning too, and you're only paying for that. But yeah, onboard some people, join again a lot more groups, sign some deals with like in the groups I was in, I signed like service swaps. I was just trying to like get as many people in the door as possible. And then this is also when more social proof started to come in, which eventually helped sales then and in the future towards the later part of those 6 months, which was just getting people in the door. The results came in, and I was like, okay, what can I do to put this on my website? What can I do to get on a call and like have you say this so then, I can put it on my website, which then helped sales velocity a lot. I even like some of my initial clients, I was just like, hey, if I can explain the results that we got you as a case on our website, can I just like deduct a certain amount off the invoice? Like, sure. And so then that was able to help like snowball things even further, made my first like part-time like VA hire, and then, yeah, just continued snowballing from there.
Love it. So explain a little bit more about this performance offer. You've since it seems like you're still offering that, but maybe you have some people on retainer as well. Yeah, just enlighten us.
Yeah, for sure. So like the performance offer, what it looked like is it wasn't pure performance, but it was pay for every qualified meeting that we got you. So for example, if we would set a target of like, hey, every meeting that we get you is $300. And so if we get you a meeting and they show up to the calendar as a result of our services, then you pay $300. So if we book you 10 meetings, that's 3,000. If you book 5 meetings, then it's 1,500. And then we'd also charge a setup fee. So that's how we got the initial buy-in cash upfront to like cover everything, and just kind of got the foundation of the relationship basically, because you want to get the buy-in, you want to make sure that they're paying upfront because it helps a lot. So that was the initial model, which was like setup fee plus performance fee. And then that eventually evolved into setup fee plus tech fee plus performance fee. The reason why is because there's like ongoing, obviously when you start out, you're just getting, you're not thinking about, you're just getting cash in the door. But over time you realize, oh wow, I have to front all these tech costs. And so you want to make sure that that's passed on the client, regardless of the results that they get, so that you're covering your bases there. Because some clients, you might book them a handful of meetings and you're barely like breaking even on your time and whatever. So then we evolved into that. And then now, as of recently, we've just moved fully to retainer because of the stability for us and the clients. We found some flaws in the model, which again, looking back, I would 100% do it over again the exact same way I did. But there's a lot of issues where it's like we would allow our clients to cancel a meeting if they felt like it was unqualified before the call, because after there's too much issues. Like if they go on the call and they're like, hey, this felt unqualified, it's like, well, we can't really do it based on that. So we gave them the option to cancel calls before they got on them. But then it felt like we were just reselling our clients every single time we book them a meeting of why they should use the work that we got them. And there's other issues there, like, we couldn't provide them certain data because if they went and they booked that meeting, then, we wouldn't be getting paid for it. So there's a lot of issues there that, again, it's just part of like starting out and getting people to say the initial yeses. But now we've moved completely over to just retainer, and that's worked out well. A lot more predictability and cash flow. Clients are happy because they know what they're paying every month, and it's been a lot like simpler.
Yeah. For all the talk about fancy offers, there's something to be said for the simplicity of a beautiful retainer that gets paid every month. The client doesn't have to think about it. You don't have to think about it. But I love that model of make it as easy as possible to say yes, to get the clients and get the experience. As the social proof stacks, then that's the point when you're getting on sales calls and you can be like, I literally don't care if you sign up or not. Like, I've got 5 more calls. I don't care. You want it? No? Okay, that's fine. And that type of authority and confidence on a call doesn't come in the first 6 months to a year. It comes after you've got all the results and you know it's going to work and that the retainer is the right move for everybody.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. So I had another question. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about how you learned cold email as well. Was there a course? And once, and what were the flaws in the courses that you found? And what are the hacks that you've discovered yourself to kind of create this quote unquote secret formula for getting results through cold email?
Yeah, I would say so. Courses and like learning wise, again, one thing I would say to anyone starting out and like me looking back was the best thing I did, which is invest in courses. Like courses, coaches, a lot of them get like a bad rap because there are like the scammy, people flexing Lambos and whatever. But 100% that fast tracked my success probably by like years just by paying people money that ROI'd within months, if not less. But I learned it partially through the coaching group that I was part of with you and Karsten. That was like kind of my initial foray of like, wow, this is outreach. Like I didn't even know direct outreach kind of existed. And actually, Karsten, he gave me a recommendation for like another group or like helped me get in another group that was like in a similar cold email adjacent. And so I joined that, learned a ton. It was like a $99 a month group that I'm still part of. They taught about cold email. That was like one, level of stuff that I learned was in there. Then I learned a ton from just doing it. And then the next level up was I invested in like a lot more expensive group that was like 10 grand or so to learn like basically from the top of just like, what is cold email? How do you run an agency around cold email? And, that skyrocketed everything. But a lot was from courses and then trial and error. There's not a ton on YouTube, unfortunately, about cold email. I make content on YouTube about cold email. There's a few other people that are now doing it. It's starting to get like more popularity. But previous to then, like the content just wasn't there. There wasn't a lot of like free stuff that you could consume. It was all paywalled. But now I think a lot of that's changing. There's a lot of really great free content out there now.
Got it. And so what's the process? Like, how do you explain it to your clients? This is what we're going to set up. This is how we write the copy. This is how we create the accounts. What does that look like?
Yeah, in terms of the process, like how I explain it to clients is there's a few steps. Like the first thing is the email infrastructure. So you have to build it out in a way that number one, you can send out a lot of emails, and number two, so that you don't land in spam. There's a lot of like tech stuff. This is constantly evolving, but we have like the best up-to-date practices, which is the stuff you learn by, consuming content around it, which is just make more email accounts, spread it out across more domains. And there's a lot of tech stuff behind there. So we build out in a way, there's a lot of other tech stuff about warming up email accounts, sending the right amounts of emails and setting up the right tech records that goes into like getting that all set up. The second layer is then determining the strategy and the leads list and the copywriting. So that's all kind of like one piece. But I would say first, leads list, you determine the types of people you want to target, you work that out with the client. So it's like the locations, the job titles, the headcounts, the industries. You get super granular and then you scrape lists using data sources and whatnot to put that together. The next layer down is the copywriting process. It's write copy, do it, short, concise way, gets eyeballs to convert. We see what works well because we send literally like hundreds of thousands of emails a month. So we have a lot of that data already, but we write that for our clients and then launch the campaigns. And then we also set the appointment. So we have someone whose full-time job is to just look at the inbox, read all the replies, monitor the replies, and book the meetings. We have processes around follow-ups, making sure that each reply, if someone says they're interested, then we follow up with them. If they don't respond, we follow up again, we follow up again, we follow up again. So we have a lot of like back-end processes around that. It's basically, you get like a system that sends out tons of emails, and then you get a full-time person who's there responding to all of them and setting the appointments on your behalf. Then we do like weekly reports beyond that. So that's like basically the sales pitch in a nutshell. There's a lot more like nuance into like very specific stuff of like, we have custom tech built out to where like, if our inbox manager doesn't know how to respond, let's say you have an intricate dentistry question about your agency, then we can forward that response and, escalate it to you, and then you can respond to it. So we have a lot of like cool stuff around that. But for the most part, we send out the emails, we do all the stuff that takes to get it's us there, and then we also respond and book them in.
Okay. So you also have the appointment setter, for lack of a better term, inbox manager, what is what you called it. How did that role come about? Did you just see the clients fumbling the initial kind of conversation and not being able to get them to the appointment?
Yeah, candidly, I just saw it as I joined the groups and saw other people running like similar models. That's just like what the standard was. I didn't have experiences where it's like, hey, client, manage your own inboxes. We just looked at it from like the macro frame that ultimately what the clients are looking for by working with us is that they don't care if they get, meetings from cold email, cold calls, or if we, have a plane drop fortune cookies out of the sky and you open up the fortune cookie and it's, your company's name and that books you calls. They just want meetings. And so we want to sell an end-to-end system where they pay us money and they get meetings, not they pay us money and they get work and have to figure out logistics. It's just like, if you pay someone to do a job, you want to pay them so you don't have to think about it. It's just like if you paid someone to like make your bed and they made half your bed and stuff, some of the stuff is still there, or you went to McDonald's and it was a hamburger, but you had to assemble it yourself. It's like you want the complete finished product. And so it just made logical sense to have someone in there booking the meetings. And so they just pay us money and they get leads and it's a win-win.
Love it. Very important frame for everybody to understand, because paying money to get more work, to get more of the work that you don't want to do. Obviously, everybody wants more work so they can make more money, but it'd be nice to have less work and more money. How did you end up hiring the inbox managers, and how many do you have right now?
So actually, just full picture, right now we're a team of 2. It's literally just me and one other person, which, going back to that point of like keeping your team lean and doing everything yourself, I'm probably taking it to too far of an extreme. And I have a new hire coming on next week. So hopefully I can offload more work and grow even more. But it came about was like, I went through, talked to some people, like a lot of the guys in the groups that I was with, they were on like virtual assistant placement companies. So I went through one of them. Over time, what I realized though is that I actually found that this role specifically is better suited as an American hire, because whenever you pay, like I pay my American hire 3.5 times more than what I would have paid them. And the reason being is because I don't have to manage. Hiring overseas, very common in the space, hiring virtual assistants, hiring people that are outside the US. It's a very obvious play in the beginning when you don't have tons of capital and you're not able to afford a US based hire. But with time, sometimes you realize that paying the extra money so you don't have to think about it and you have someone who's basically like self-sufficient, not that all overseas hires are bad, but this one specifically, they're like responding in English, having to have very like deep level conversations that just require like a native level of English, not just like a 90% fluency. That was something I came to do over time. But in the beginning, I hired overseas, had someone else managing it. I had to do a lot of like management on top of that to make sure that the quality was there. But then with time, after like iteration and having issues and, really just wanting to scale, I hired US based, and that was basically like the process there. And I only have one because, again, like if you have someone who does the work really, really well, you'd be surprised of like the type of output they can do.
Yes.
Yeah. If you just get like a good A player.
Yeah. Like no matter what the position is, you should be hiring somebody smarter than you. Why would you go worse? Like, why would you hire somebody that's worse than you? Genuinely think about it. Like that means that you are going to be the source of all knowledge for that person. Whereas what I want to do is you have tons of expertise. You know exactly what you're doing in a different business. I'm going to train you on my business for 2 weeks and then you're going to be self-sufficient. And it took me way too long to realize that, but hopefully someone listening can learn from our mistakes of going cheap before just realizing that your sanity is worth way more than the extra money you'd save, not hiring across.
It's not even the sanity. It's like you literally cannot scale if you have to micromanage like it will make you more money by paying more. I promise you, if you get a person that you don't have to think about, because your time is worth money. And so, yes, you're saving a couple grand a month, but then you're spending your 2 hours a day still having to manage them. And it's like, that's not scalable. You just can't run a business like that.
You get to spend money and you get to spend more time doing the job yourself, basically, because the person can't do it correctly. So what's the craziest result you've seen from a cold email campaign so far?
Yeah, I would say one of our clients, we book them probably on average for the past 6 or 7 months. We book them somewhere in the ballpark of like 30 to 40 meetings a month, just super consistently using cold email. Nothing fancy. We're not calling any leads. We're not doing anything that's not just sending emails out. And yeah, they're getting great result. Like we booked hundreds of meetings for them over the past like 6 months, and they've turned out to be one of our best clients, obviously, as a result of that. And a lot of that truthfully came from them just having a great service, right? Going back to like having great quality clients and whatnot, if you have a client who has a great service, people want it, and they have tons of case studies, it's way easier to sell than if you have a client who's just starting out, has no case studies, and doesn't know what they're selling. This is true for all agencies. The quality of your clients is going to dictate the quality of your business. And while I can't, I'd love to just say like, oh, we did the super, super niche specific thing. And we did a lot of like unique stuff for this client. But I would say that like the biggest lever of what is going to drive results, it's like half of your own experience, your quality of results, and it's also just the quality of the client. Because if they have a great service, they have a great offering, they're willing to work with you, you're going to get them way better results.
Can you say what their service is?
Yeah, so they sell commission only appointment setters. I actually have two clients that are kind of similar and we're booking them about similar results. It's commission only sales reps, basically. Like you get results and you only pay if they get you results.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. We're just amplifying, as marketers, we just amplify what the client is already doing. So if they have a terrible reputation, if they have a terrible service, you're just accelerating the rate at which people find out that they have a terrible service and reputation. But if they have a great service and a great reputation, like that's the wind in the sails and makes you look really good, even if you've just done the same exact thing as you do for every other client.
100%.
So are most of your clients now marketing agencies? I know you mentioned that that was the direction you were going in, but it also sounds like you've worked with some pretty cool clients. What are some of the unique niches you've been in, and what would you say the current breakdown is of clients that you have?
I would say probably 40%, maybe 30 to 40% is agencies. We have like a pretty diverse range. And it's a lot of companies that you just like wouldn't expect. And the great part about also building a brand and having inbound leads now come in is you get to work with a lot of people that I wouldn't have originally thought like, oh, this would be a person I would want to seek out. Like we work with someone who does like polling services, can't like literal like canvassing. We work with someone who does creative design, video editing, content, IT, finance related stuff, recruitment related stuff. It's really just like a ton of industries.
And all of those are coming from cold email, so it's just kind of like you scrape the list and you don't know who it's going to show up in front of, but you end up on a call with somebody and you're like, I didn't even know this business existed. Is that's what is happening, I assume?
Yeah, I would say that probably a lot of the agency stuff, that stuff that I scrape. Now, as of recently, I've been putting a lot of LinkedIn content, YouTube content, Twitter content, and that's where you get more of like these niche stuff like accountants and like polling services companies. Like those are the people we wouldn't typically reach out to, but a lot of our own outreach is just pretty directed.
Yeah, I love that. I love the niche conversation because there's so many layers to it. It's like focus on a niche, focus on a niche. If you focus on a niche, there's a lot of benefits to that. But then when you just start creating valuable content and putting it out into the world, like I get like real estate agents and mortgage brokers and other people reaching out to me. They're like, how do I use high level? Like, I want to do this. And they're signing up for, right. Like, I'm probably going to end up broadening what I do because when I say agency dominance, they're like, oh, it doesn't really make sense for me to sign up to that. But when you switch it to, online marketing dominance or whatever I'm going to call it, then I can serve those people. It's more interesting for me. I really like doing that kind of thing and find these niches that you literally are never going to show up on a SMA guru's niche list. They're not going to show up when you search the local chamber of commerce, like these things that you would never think of, but are literally printing money. And there's some beauty to that, I think.
Yeah, I think that an interesting everyone says like niche down, niche down, niche down, but they don't understand like why. The reason why is so you can have, you can speak to a specific persona, audience, and whatnot, and potentially even get them better results, productize your service a little more. Especially when you're starting out, I don't really think there's much of a reason. Like people will just pick the most random one. Like I want to work with trash collectors, and it's like why? You just picked it out of a phone book. Like, do you even know if they want what you're selling? It's like maybe after a year, I realized that my marketing agency clients get the best results, or my, private equity clients get the best results and they're the most profitable. And then I niche down. But there's no point, especially in the beginning, and especially if you can't provide a unique value. And like whether it's, a any B2B company, you get the leads, you identify the audience, you scrape the list, you run the campaign, you respond.
Yeah.
There's not much value in like narrowing down to one niche, artificially weeding out a lot of people that could be interested, and then also just getting the same results. It's like it doesn't really add much to that. There definitely are cases where you should, and maybe the audience is really wide or you get better results for them. But especially in the beginning, like definitely not. I would just keep it broad. Like my niche is B2B, which is huge.
Yeah. I think it makes people like, yes, it's simpler, but it can make you lazy. Like you're just like, oh, I can just copy paste the same exact ads for every single chiropractor that I work with. Doesn't matter what city they're in. And then all of a sudden it's not working. You're like, oh man, I don't actually know marketing. I just know copy pasting. And if instead you have to customize a little bit and learn fundamentals and principles, you're going to progress a lot faster and you're going to have a lot more confidence. And that's better for longevity in a career versus, oh wow, it's broken. My template's broken. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, and it expands your horizons to things you would have never. The niche is like, I would have never thought that I'd work with half the clients I do. And now I understand their verticals. Maybe down the road, I realize like, wow, this is super profitable. Let's just specifically work with them.
Okay, lastly, to close out, what's the craziest call you've been on where you're like, I had no idea I could have booked a meeting with this person?
Yeah, I would say there's so many. The one that just sticks out immediately comes to mind is I was working with, investment bankers or like, really high level finance guys. I got on a call, I booked a call, it was through cold email because I want to reach out, finance professionals, whatnot. This guy, he's taking a call from a yacht, and not like a small yacht, like a big yacht. And then like, he's like overlooking the water. Like it's like, you wouldn't believe. It's like this guy is literally just on a yacht taking a sales call. He was like no showing for the first minutes. I'm like, hey, like what's going on? And he's like, oh, sorry, I missed it. And you get on the laptop, it's like, what is, like, who am I talking to? Like, is this the president or something? Like, this guy's on this massive thing. I was like, that was one of the craziest ones that immediately comes to mind. I'm sure there's like a million more. After getting on like literally hundreds and hundreds of sales calls, there's some crazy ones, but that's the one that just stuck out right away.
Were you ready for that one or did you book it too early in your journey?
I know when I was working with you and Karsten, I booked a call with like someone who's part of a Fortune 500 company. It was like, 40, $50 billion company. And I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I had no idea what I was even selling. It was one of the first few sales calls I got on. I'm like, yeah, we can like help send you like emails and stuff and do LinkedIn. They're like, oh, cool. Yeah. Like it was super awkward.
That's hilarious. So did you close the yacht guy?
The yacht guy didn't close, is for a different reason, but yeah, I didn't close either one of those calls, but the funny experiences to look back on.
We're going to follow up in a year and I want you to close someone, but they have to take the sales calls from a yacht. Otherwise you lose. I don't know what you lose, but you just lose the competition.
I just lose everything.
Yeah. Well, Matt Lucero, ladies and gentlemen, where can they find you if they want to learn about cold email or maybe hiring you and your agency?
Yeah, for sure. So the agency, it's Anevo Marketing, ANEVO marketing.com. Google it. Also, my social stuff, Matt Lucero on YouTube, Matt Lucero on LinkedIn, Matt Lucero on Twitter. I post content about cold email. I have all my, links if you want, if you couldn't spell my agency, and, there you can find on my YouTube or Twitter or somewhere. But yeah, that's basically everything. Appreciate being on here.
Yeah, man. We'll link all of that below and we'll see you guys next time.